Oh, hey, folks. Welcome to another great week, another great topic. We have a special guest this week. So, let me start first by saying I always talk about training things and how to work with your dogs and stuff, but there's also a lot of questions that I get on the back end when I'm at working with you guys at your homes or with other clients. And that's usually about doggy daycare, where to find a doggy daycare. Is my dog good for doggy daycare? So there's all sorts of questions. While yes, I do know some information about doggy daycare, I figured let's bring in someone who does doggy daycare herself and does a bunch of other stuff. So we have Joeana here from Paws on You. And so I'm just gonna let her introduce herself, tell you a little bit about what she does, and then we'll jump into some stuff about doggy daycare and ask her some of the questions you guys have been asking me. So Joeana, do you want to tell them a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So
Uh-oh. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can't hear you. Hold on, folks. We're having technical difficulties. Give us a second. It happens. We're live. Bear with us. Yep. Bear with us, folks. It happens. Yep. But while Joanna gets situated, we're going to be talking about, yep. Sometimes if you just disconnect your earphones, that has worked too, because the same thing has happened to me. Give us a second, folks. Oh, I think I hear you. Are you back?
can you, yeah, I think
Uh-oh.
so.
Okay. All right. So I can't see you now. Turn on your camera. There you go.
There we go. Oh, there we go.
I
There we
can.
go. I
You're
don't know what
back.
happened.
All right. We're
I'm
back,
back. I'm back.
folks.
Um, so I don't even know where I started, but yeah. So I do, besides training, I do grooming and I also do doggy daycare in home and at your home. And I'll go over the difference as to what that is and what that entails in doggy daycare.
Yep.
So, you know, if your dog is fit for it, all the behavior stuff that we look for is, how are they with other dogs? Are they aggressive? Are they calm?
Mhm.
Those are the tests that they will give you at, if you go to Dogtopia or, other
Yep.
kind of mom and pop shops that they will go and they will do a test, a temperament test is what they call it.
Mhm. Yep.
And it lasts about an hour to 45 minutes. And
Okay.
they literally like bring in different dogs with different temperaments,
Yep.
see how your dog reacts, and then they bring them into a big pack setting.
Okay.
Normally in a pack, you will have 10 to 12 dogs per one person. If you're
Okay.
looking for something more personable, I would go to like a smaller mom and pop shop
Mhm.
that only does like 5 dogs with one person instead of, 15 dogs to a pack.
Yeah. And is it important? So kind of to backtrack. So this is like the initial visit, like if they call like you or some or doggy daycare, like this is like the process they go through.
Yes, yeah. So this is
Okay.
the process. The first initial process is they take the dog's information down,
Okay.
breed, behavior, how they interact with other dogs in the neighborhood, like on leash, off leash, whatever.
Mhm.
And then they do a temperament test between different dogs that are in the daycare setting.
Okay. And so when they call, because I know a lot of questions I get from my clients, like they are concerned, of course they do the temperament testing and things like that. So kind of to backtrack a little bit, finding a doggy daycare, you had mentioned that looking for a smaller daycare or a bigger daycare. So when the clients are thinking about looking for a doggy daycare, how do they know whether they should look for like a smaller one for their dog with a smaller setting or a bigger one?
So yeah, so the one of the ways that I know how to do that is to go to the dog park and see how your dog reacts.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing because if your dog reacts differently in a bigger pack versus a smaller pack, that's going to tell you a lot.
Makes perfect sense. And you hear that? That's a good tip, folks. Take your dog to the dog park first and see how they interact with the other dogs or within a smaller group setting. And that'll give you a good indication of whether you should look for a smaller daycare or a bigger daycare. And what sorts of things should people be looking out for, like if their dog is not appropriate for doggy daycare? And what
So
can they
yeah,
do?
yep. So there are different signs as to, your dog is feeling stressed, and you should know this by now that, a tail between the legs, like
Mhm.
super shy, skittish, doesn't want to be there, don't
Yep.
force your dog into a situation it doesn't want to go to.
Yep.
So like if you're trying the dog park for the first time, I would walk around the fence and see how they interact. If there's like
Yep.
one or two dogs there, normally the best time to go to the dog park is very early in the morning because you're only going to find
Yes.
about a handful of people. Late afternoon, you're going to find your big packs of dogs where everybody's getting out of work and they want to take their dog to just let out the zoomies.
Yep.
And you can also test that way too. So if you go in the morning one day and then you go in the evening another day and just see how they interact. And Hero's saying
Yep.
hi.
Mhm. Yep. So no, that's actually really good tips. And far as once they do find a doggy daycare, what are some of the things they should look for in a facility? Like, should they be looking for cleanliness? Like, what kind of things should be red flags, and what sort of things should be like, oh yes, this is the place for me?
Yeah, so definitely cleanse clean atmosphere, especially like if
Yep.
you're walking in and you don't smell like urine or dog poop, it's very important because
Yep.
especially like having that clean feeling in the facility is going to make you feel a lot better leaving your dog there. If you're walking in and you can smell dog urine, feces, that's
Yep.
probably not a good sign. There's probably, a lot of stuff going on in that
Mhm.
facility that you don't
Yep.
want your dog to catch.
Exactly. And another thing I talk to my clients about too, and people who ask about doggy daycare, you want to treat it as if you're sending your own child, if you do have children to daycare. And those are the same things you want to look for your dog. Is like, it's no different. So keep that in mind as well. Also, what about, I get this question a lot. Far as different temperatures at the daycare, like if you live in a state like we do in New England when it gets extremely cold, what about, oh, I'm going to send my dog to daycare. What do they do when it's cold? Are those questions that they should be asking the daycare as well? Like what sort of
Yes.
questions should they be asking them?
So some facilities have indoor outdoor, and some
Hmm.
facilities are just indoor only.
Yep.
Dogtopia is one of them where they're indoor only, and then they take the dogs outside for a potty break.
Yep.
Um, Otherwise than that, look for, is the yard fenced in? Do they have
Yes.
appropriate, outdoor time? Do they have a steady schedule that they stick to? So
Hmm.
say like outdoor playtime, especially here in New England, having those deep cold days, we got to
Yes.
make sure that our dogs are protected even if they go out. So having, listening to, hey, how long do you have the dogs outside for in,
Yes.
certain below temperatures here? Do you let them outside? How long do you let them out for? Those are questions that you should be asking. And especially in the hot summer that
Mhm.
that
Oh
we've
yeah.
been having,
Hmm.
make sure that the facility does have AC or something similar to cool down the dogs, because you definitely don't want your dog to overheat and have heat stroke.
Exactly, exactly. And as far as what should they ask about, far as emergency procedures and things like that? Because we always think send our dogs to doggy daycare, but what do they do in case of emergency? What kind of things do you do, like in a case of emergency, like if my dog gets bitten by another dog, or say they get injured?
Yep. So normally they will have your vet's info on file as well as an emergency contact if they can't get a hold of you. I do the
Hmm.
same thing. I take down, your emergency contact for if I can't get a hold of you, and also your vet and emergency vet. If
Yep.
your dog gets, everybody should be watching at doggy daycare. So, even if an aggression issue was to break out, excuse me,
Hmm.
then, Hero
Kara's
wants
like,
his
what did you
time
say?
too.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so
Yep.
so yeah,
Yep.
just keeping them keeping an eye out
Hmm.
um for those behaviors, but
Of
obviously
course.
they've been tested, so they shouldn't have a breakout of a fight or anything other than that.
Of
That should
course.
never happen at doggy daycare at all.
Yeah, and what about far as activities? Should they be asking about a daily schedule, and what should a daily schedule of a doggy and daycare look like? Or
So
does it depend on the location?
it depends on the location as well as how many staff they have per dog
Okay.
and how much outdoor time do they have, and it depends on your breed of dog too. So,
Okay.
your smaller dogs will have smaller amount of time. Your
Hmm.
bigger dogs are going to have that big energy release time of, 4 to 5 hours, not straight, but they're going to
Yep.
have a good outdoor time
Okay.
to play and to do stuff. So normally, some of the
Hmm.
places do have ramps. They
Hmm.
have tunnels that the dogs can go up and through and everything. And then some places do have a quiet time where they take the dogs, they put them in crates, and it's
Yep.
quiet time for at least 30 minutes.
Oh,
So,
good. Yep.
yeah.
Hmm. And also, is it important that, I train with a lot of clients whose dogs have separation anxiety? Is it okay for a dog that's working through separation anxiety or have like mild separation anxiety to go to daycare knowing that they have that downtime?
Yeah, so, as long as they can crate, it's
Hmm.
totally fine.
Okay.
I personally had a dog that, had high anxiety, and they ended up going to Dogtopia, and it actually ended up building up,
The
the
confidence.
confidence of the
Yep.
dog, which was crazy because mom was, like,
Hmm.
super anxious, and you could see, the anxiousness of both the dog and her through leash, and when
Hmm.
the dog went into the play area, it
Yep.
was a dog. It didn't have
Exactly.
any anxiety problems. So the anxiety was going through mom into the dog.
Hmm.
So,
Yep. Yep. And I always talk about how dogs learn from each other. And to piggyback off that, if, young dogs, of course, you and I both know, like socialization is very important. If people don't have time to socialize their dog, do you think doggy daycare is sufficient enough?
yes, I do. I think even though, they're not getting the socialization at a young age,
Hmm.
they should still always be socialized because they are packed animals. We got to remember
Yep.
they're descendants of wolves. So,
Yep.
they want to be in a pack. They want to be either a pack leader or they want to, just
Hmm.
follow around. And you can obviously see when you go to a dog park, even if you go by yourself for the first
Yep.
time and don't take your dog, observe, watch if people are watching
Yep.
their dogs or they're watching their phones. Normally, at the evening, people are watching their phones more than they're watching their dogs. In the morning,
True.
people are watching their dogs.
Yep.
Make sure that people are cleaning up their poop when you're going to the dog park. But
Hmm.
I suggest going first by yourself, observing the whole situation, and then,
Hmm.
socializing on the weekends, and then starting that way, and then building into going into a facility or into,
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And first, I get, you and I both work like busy families, busy people. Do most doggy daycares offer training or it just depends?
it depends on the facility if they do offer it. Some
Mhm.
facilities do offer training at night. I know a couple
Okay.
that do night training, and then others don't. So, I mean, if you're sending your dog just to go be socialized, then yes. But
Hmm.
some offer training, some
Okay.
don't. So
And just to piggyback, I'm like just to piggyback off that question too. Far as training, just so people will know, what kind of training do doggy daycare offer? Like, if I have a dog who has separation anxiety, is it okay to send it to doggy daycare for training, or that's leash pulling, or is it more for basic obedience?
that's more for basic
Or it depends.
obedience. So it
Okay.
depends, but it's more for basic obedience that they're going
Okay.
to be training for. It's not for separation. You would have to hire, a trainer that does deal with separation.
Hmm.
Leave it. Sit.
Hmm.
Um, you would have to deal with that um,
Okay.
with a trainer, obviously, for separation anxiety. Why are you
Of
being
course, of
rude?
course. And far as I get this question too, what about dogs who are not neutered or spayed? What do they do
Yep.
then? Can my dog still go to doggy daycare?
So they can still go to doggy daycare.
Okay.
They would just probably either be placed somewhere where there's not that risk of pregnancy happening. But
Yep.
obviously, you don't want to send your dog if they are,
Mhm.
that time of the month.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
Hmm.
you definitely don't want to send them then. And obviously keep them home. You don't ever want to send your dog when they're sick either. If they have
Yes.
Gardia or
Oh yeah.
anything else, you definitely don't want to send them when they're sick. It's just like a child. You wouldn't send your child to school sick. So
Hmm.
why would you send your dog? Because then it could transfer onto another dog.
Okay. And far as the age of when my dog can start doggy daycare, when dogs can start, what is the age and what do they need?
So they do need all their vaccines.
Hmm.
As long as they're fully vaccinated, they can go to doggy daycare.
Okay.
They do need their rabies. They do need distemper.
Yep.
They do need, the basics,
Yeah. Yep.
kennel
And then they're
cough and
all set to
everything.
go.
Yep.
Call, get an intake appointment. And you said the first day is like an intake is like a half a day.
Yeah, so normally
Okay.
they would do the intake process and they would go through, the different
Okay.
temperament test, and then they would put them in the pack and see how they
Hmm.
do. They don't want your dog to be overstressed, so if they're seeing, they're playing, they're being a
Hmm.
dog, they can stay for a while. They're more than welcome to stay.
Okay.
If they're super stressed, tail between the legs, they're gonna say, "Hey, I think you should come back and start at half days, and
Hmm.
then eventually go to full
The
days."
build up. Okay.
Yep.
And I hear this too because just like our kids, it was your first time leaving them at school, you're kind of sad. Do we get a chance to see it? Because I know I talked to some clients, they're able to see their dogs at doggy daycare through a cam. Some aren't. And are those daycares that offer doggy cam better than the ones that don't offer it? And how do I get to see my dog
So
and
yeah,
check on
so
him?
um, there's benefits, and then
Hmm.
there's pros and cons.
Yep.
Because having to be able to see your dog during those hours is great, but
Hmm.
then I think it also causes the owner's anxiety to be like,
Oh,
oh god, what is
definitely.
my dog doing, you know
Yep.
um
Yep.
so it's one of those things where,
It can depend on the type of
yeah, it
person.
depends
Like for
on the
me, it probably cause
situation.
anxiety.
Yeah, it can cause anxiety. Hero, he's pushing me
Hmm.
everywhere. um
Hmm.
it all depends on how you are. If you want to
Yep.
be able to see him, her,
Yep.
you can definitely
Hmm.
see them. But I think for the most part, it's totally a one. If you want to see them, okay.
Yep.
If you don't, you don't. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. I think
Hmm.
in the end, as long as you trust the facility that your dog is in,
Hmm.
you should be able to be like, okay, I'm not going to check on my dog all day. I'm just gonna,
Exactly.
let them
Yep.
be.
Hmm. And I feel like as time goes on, when I'm working with clients and their dogs in conjunction with doggy daycare, they do tend to check on the cameras less once they built that, confidence in the daycare and trust them and stuff. So, like you said, there's pros and cons, but whichever works for you. All right. So now that we know how to get our dog into doggy daycare, the questions to ask, the red flags and stuff. So my dog attends the first half day session. I pick my dog up. How do I know if my dog's still right for doggy daycare? How do I know if my dog like doggy daycare if they don't really talk to me?
Sure. So you can definitely see, even if they go in and you see that tail wagging, you know that
Yep.
they're going to enjoy their day. When
Okay.
they come out and they're greeting you and they're like super happy and they're super happy to see you, tail is wagging and they're like,
Hmm.
all over you, they had a good day. And
Yep.
you could always ask, the front desk or whoever's there giving you your dog back, be like, hey, I was just wondering how they did today.
Yep.
What did they do? How were they? You can always ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions when you're
Hmm.
there at the front desk. You can be like, hey, so how did Sam do today? Did he do
Hmm.
okay?
Yep.
Just
Yep.
basic.
Yeah. And so, what are the signs that my doggy doesn't really like doggy daycare? What are those red flags?
So those red flags would be like if you checked in and your dog is like in the corner and he's not playing, or
Hmm.
if they call you and be like, hey, Sam's not doing too great. He's in the corner. He doesn't want to play. He just wants to be left alone. You'll know. They'll call and
Yeah.
they'll tell you. They're not gonna sit there and sugarcoat it
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, of course, because they want the dog to be happy. They want it to be a happy environment for everyone else. Yeah. So I hope everyone have gained all the proper resources, and I, asked all the questions that you wanted me to ask for looking for a doggy daycare. And Joanna, do you have anything else to kind of add to this, like that I didn't touch on that you think people should know about looking for a doggy daycare in general?
Yeah, sure. So most doggy daycares do offer boarding as well. We
Oh
all know
yeah.
that
Yep.
boarding can be expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So between in home and at somebody else's house are two totally different things, plus boarding. So boarding your
Yep.
dog overnight is going to be at a facility.
Yeah, what is the cost range for these things so they'll know? Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, so boarding at like a facility is going to be 45 to like 65 at like
Hmm.
a big facility, say like um something corporate.
Yep.
Your mom and pops might be a little bit smaller, like
Yep.
as to portion size, and then you
Hmm.
got, your at home businesses where they come out to you and you get that personal care where your dog is in the house, they're not stressed, you
Okay.
haven't left them, somebody is coming in, obviously, most people will come out and do like a meet and greet, and that's free
Hmm.
normally. Hopefully nobody's charging for a meet and greet.
Yeah.
um but so in home sitting would be at your house, and
Yep.
then there's boutique boarding with me.
Yep.
And then your dog would stay here with me, and they get 24-hour care. They get, kids to play with, outdoor
Hmm.
play, another dog to play with
It's
if they
more
get
like a
along
home
with other
environment.
dogs. Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
like a home environment where people are coming in, they're getting petted, they're getting loves.
Mhm.
And then it's the same thing in your home, except it's one person staying there. They're getting your mail, they're making sure your house is safe too. So you get that added security. With
Yep.
that, it's a little bit more expensive because somebody is taking care of your house, taking care of your dog in
Hmm.
their
Hmm.
environment. So it does cost a little bit more.
Yeah. So now that everyone knows the price range, doggy daycare stuff, you always just want to go back to your dog and what works for your dog. You can talk to your friends and get recommendations and stuff like that, but you want to look for, what your dog needs. And so, Joanna, where can people find you if they want some type of boarding, grooming, all that stuff? And what's your service area?
Sure. So my service area is Bristol County and surrounding towns around that. Um,
Hmm.
I do grooming, I do boarding, and I do training as well.
Yep.
Um, and so I do both in home and
Yep.
out of home boarding.
And
I
where
think
can
that's
they
Oh
find
yeah,
you?
where
Like if they
can you
want to
find me?
contact you? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So you can contact me via Paws on You on Facebook, or you
Hmm.
can email me at pawsonyou2019 at gmail.com,
Yeah. And
or yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Yep. No, go ahead. And where else?
and Twitter. So you can find me
Yep.
on Twitter as well.
Yeah, and if you have any other questions that we didn't touch on here or something pops up, just drop them in the comments and we'll get them answered for you. And if for some reason you can't find Joanna, or if you're looking for me and myself, vice versa, if you find her, you'll find me. If you find me, I'll get you in contact with her. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this live, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you next week for another great topic. Okay? Bye, folks.